We are back for another month. It is April. You might have noticed we got some new packaging. I'm excited because it just kind of holds all of our supplies a little bit better. So let me back this out so you can see everything that's in our box, hopefully. All right, so you're going to get your homemade inks this month that I sent you. You will have 3 in your package. I just put all of those in so I could show you the colors. And then you will have 2 inks from Ziller. Now they're gonna look very separated when they come to you. This is how they look in the bottle too. This is what they look like. And you can see, oh, if I don't shake it too much, there we go. You can see they just separate really easily. So that's totally normal. You'll just give it a little shake. And then you have a straight holder. This is what's going to hold your nibs. We'll get into that some more. You have a tin with a slide top. And then inside you have 2 nibs. One is called a Nico G nib. And then this pointier, funkier looking one is a Leonard 33 nib. And we'll also talk more about those. And then below all the fluff is the lesson for this month from the amazing Raquel. So let's open it up. I'll show you what we have. We have some stickers we're going to use for our project. I sent you some blank ones also. And then we have our lesson. Raquel gives us a lot of information about setting up our nib. So this is going to be pretty extensive. I'm going to go really in depth for those of you that have never used a nib and ink before. It can be a little intimidating. And then a flourishing workbook. We're using some black paper this month. And then she's provided this beautiful exemplar of flourished capital letters. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with the pen and pen holder. All right, you're going to find some tips here in your page to start out the workbook with, but I'm going to skip over to the basics here because Raquel goes really in depth, and we're just going to go through this together so that I can show you what she means in some of these. This is just very basic. If you have never done calligraphy or dip pen calligraphy, it can look intimidating. Like you look at this pen and it kind of looks, what in the world do I do with that? There are a lot of different types of pen holders. You can get really expensive ones. You can get handmade ones. You can get wooden ones, resin ones, 3D printed ones. I mean, they come in just a variety of, here we go. Here's just a little bit of my collection. Oh, okay, let's show you this one because I love it too. Okay, so here is just some pretty pens to look at. This is like plastic, your very cheapest, what you find, I mean, pretty readily available. This is the Speedball holder. And I'll show you why I don't love it in just one second. And so you can see here that all of these pens have this brass flange coming out the side. That is called an oblique holder. Okay, that's the flange, and that makes it an oblique holder. If it doesn't have a flange, like the one that you have in your kit this month, or some of them, like this one, has a removable flange, then it is just called a straight holder, because there's no angle. The nib just goes in straight. Okay, so you have oblique holders and you have straight holders. And then we are going to switch over to talking about the nibs, and I'll come back to why I don't love this one. Okay, the nibs that you have this month are the Nico G. Anything with a G on the end, like a Tachikawa G or a Zebra G, those are very beginner friendly. They're very sturdy, good beginner nibs, okay? So I'm going to show you a little bit about the nibs. This is in Raquel's handouts there. But these are the tines right here. These are the tines, and they are flexible. That's what is going to make your lettering, your calligraphy, really differentiated, thick and thin. So when you add pressure to a nib, those tines are going to split apart. And I should say when you add pressure to a pointed pen nib, the tines spread apart. Pointed pen nib meaning these are pointed pen nibs. If I pulled out this type of nib, it looks completely different and it has a square top. These are for broad edge where you write like italics, black letter, Old English, and they do spread a little bit, but in a different way than the pointed pen nibs. So we are doing pointed pen nibs. Again, here's your tines. They all have a vent hole. Okay, so let's see, get in really close. Here is your vent hole in this one. Here's your vent hole in the Nico G. Over here is what you would call a shoulder. And then this is going to be the base or the shaft. And then some people refer to it as the body. Okay, so this is where you're going to dip your ink in. This is what you're going to insert into your pen holder. Okay, so if I have my oblique holders, I'll just show you how mine are set up here. You can see that the nib is coming out the back just a little bit. So when I showed you this one, I said I don't love it. It works okay to get started with, but it doesn't allow you to adjust your nib at all up and down. It doesn't allow it to come out the back. So it doesn't allow it to be set up properly. And by properly, I mean if you're using an oblique holder, let me show you this from the top. Okay, get it lined up here. If you're using an oblique holder, the tip of the nib should line up with the center of the pen holder. So maybe if I use this card, you can see that a little bit better. We'll switch to this one too. So there's the tip of the nib. There's the center of the pen holder. And you want it to move to where it lines up with center. And by move, I mean pull it, push it, or pull. Okay? So if you're using an oblique holder, that's what you're going to do. Push it in until it lines up with the middle of the pen holder. Because we are just using a straight holder this month to get started, inside you'll see those little tines. Okay, you have this beautiful mahogany straight holder, and let's see, here's another one. Here's a brand new one, so you can maybe see that a little bit better. Those tines show up a little bit better. The nib is going to go in between. Can you see that? In between those tines and the silver ring, because the tines are what's going to hold it into place. So I could put it on any 4 of those tines. I just want to make sure that it's between the tine and the silver ring. And basically you're just going to push it in. You're just going to push it in until it's firm. You know, if you go just a little bit, it's still wiggly. So you don't want to force it, but just push it in until you can't really push it anymore. Okay, so mine ended up looking kind of like that for the Leonard nib. And then I'm just going to set both of mine up since I'll be demonstrating both of them. Here's my Nico G. I'm going to go between the tines and the metal ring and just push until I can't really push anymore. So that's what both of those look like inserted to where they are firm. Okay, so right off the bat, you can see that when I add a little bit of pressure, what the Nico G on the left here, I mentioned was very firm. The Leonard is going to be very flexible, which is great for flourishing. Probably why Raquel loves it so much. So that is going to be the difference in the nibs, is the flexibility. Sometimes the length, like you can get an EF nib, which is extra fine, so it will write really small. But the main difference is going to be the flexibility of the nib, depending on what script you're writing, or if you're heavy-handed or light-handed. I mean, there are just so many nibs. This is a popular one, a blue pumpkin. It's a Bros nib. And it works really well with metallic inks. I use it a lot. Nico G. Here's another kind of funky looking one. This one is another Leonard nib. Hunt nibs are really popular. And here it is. Hunt nibs are characterized by that kind of medallion shape in the nib. They're very pointy, so they're not as beginner friendly because they catch on the paper a lot. And then this one is similar to the Bros Rose nib, and I'll link a lot of these in the blog to share with you. And here's a Leonard Principle, one of my favorites for flexibility. It's going to be pretty similar to this one, but this one's going to give you a little bit more swell, more juice, more ink coming off. So I think that is a little spiel on the nibs. We'll link some of our favorites. Again, like I said, the Nico G is very beginner friendly. It's recommended everywhere. And then we included this other one, which is going to be fun to play with for flourishing. Okay, now that we've got our nibs into our holders, we have got to clean our nibs. So this is also in Raquel's workbook, but I just want to show you what she is demonstrating. So it's inserted into the nib and we are ready for ink. I am going to just use this black ink I have out, just simply so it shows up well on the nib, so I can show you what I mean. My fingers have been all over this, showing you, the flexibility and stuff, and they're brand new nibs. So when they come from the manufacturer, they're coated in a layer so that they won't rust over time. So they do not work right out of the package. They're not going to be ready to go. So you've got to clean your nibs. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, stick it in a potato for 30 seconds. The starch cleans it off. Some people just put it in their mouth. Some people will use a flame. I've never had one that was that extreme. Usually I can just use some water and a paper towel, and that's going to do the trick. Okay, so let me kind of show you. When I dip it in here, I dipped it in the ink, and you can see how it's beating up. It's beating up. It's not really like consistent. Let me show you what a well-used nib looks like when I dip it in. See how that one coats it all the way from where I dipped it? It sticks to the nib. So that brand new one is beating up, and the one that I use all the time, it is coated to it. Okay, I'm going to rinse that one off. I'm going to rinse this one again, and I'm going to give it a good wipe with my paper towel. You just want to make sure you're not getting the fibers of the paper towel in the little cracks. Sometimes it will snag on the nib, and then that's going to hold your ink and make a big mess. So make sure, like it just caught there, make sure the paper towel is not sticking. Sometimes I'll use just a baby wipe, simply because I have a lot of baby wipes around my house. But okay, so just with one cleaning, you can see that it's already sticking better. Still not perfect, but better. I'm going to do it. I'm going to wipe it off and do it one more time. And that's probably going to be good. Once I start writing, I will know if it really needs another cleaning. Okay, look at that. That's the third wipe, and it's sticking pretty well. So there are a lot of methods, like I said, to cleaning your nib. Whoop, I just pulled it right out of the holder. To cleaning your nib. the potato method, some pen, you can buy pen cleaner. I honestly never do that. I just use some water. Sometimes if I don't clean it right away after I've been working and I'm being lazy, I can grab a little bit of Windex and clean it that way, but I usually don't have a problem. Okay, that's the first dip in that one. I'm going to see what it looks like for you. Okay, see, completely beating up. So once I've cleaned this, I want to keep my fingers off of it so that the oils don't get on it either, because the oils from your fingers will make it beat up as well. There I go again. Okay, so there's a third little swish in the water. Let's see if this gets it off. And I mean, there we go. 3 cleans and wipes, and it's pretty consistent there. So I'm happy with that. So the nibs are inserted into the pen holder, and they are clean. I don't want to touch them with my finger oils now. That means I am ready to add ink and my paper and get started. Okay, so we were talking about inks. The one that I was just showing you is called Sumi ink. It's a great ink just for practicing. We'll link this in the blog as well. This is Sumi ink. It's made out of soot, so it's fairly inexpensive. And because you practice so much, I like to use this because it's affordable. You're not wasting your really fancy ink. This is a orange Sumi ink called Vermilion ink. And then when you get to your final piece, you can use your higher quality inks. That way you're not, you know, spending the extra dollars on practicing. So the ink that you have this month to sample is called Ziller ink. And I showed you right at the beginning, it does separate, okay? But it goes right back together. Now if you had this jar, instead of shaking it, if I could get it open here, okay, let me try this one. Instead of shaking it, they do recommend stirring it. The only reason is because if you shake it, you get a lot of air bubbles. They'll go away, but if you're in a hurry and you don't want air bubbles on your nib, then you just give it like a slow swirl rather than a shake. And then you'll see if I shake these ones up, they get a little bit bubbly, but they're gonna go right away. So you just have some samples in your box. It's gonna be a lot of ink though to get you through the lesson and a lot of playing and practicing. And Ziller is a very popular brand. Calligraphers love it because it's ready to go right out of the bottle. You don't have to dilute it, you don't have to add water, anything like that. If you leave the lid off and it doesn't seem to be coming off your nib, maybe that means that some of the water has evaporated, so you could add a couple drops of water. If you're still struggling and it's not coming off your nib, try cleaning your nib, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to start with my Nico G, just because it's going to be the most beginner friendly. I'm going to use this dark blue so that you can see really well what's going on. Okay, so you see how you got air bubbles in it? Okay, these have the dropper bottles in it, but honestly, I don't usually have to squeeze it just by dipping it in the ink and then just rubbing it along the back side of your nib. Maybe a tiny squeeze to get one drop out, and that's gonna be plenty of ink to start. Okay, see how that just coated right when I rubbed it down? Now it's not gonna be on the front because I didn't dip it in the jar. I could actually, but it's not completely necessary. If it's on the back, that's gonna be just fine. Okay, so we talked about our inks, and now let me tell you about paper. This might make a little more sense now about paper and why we use the HP LaserJet for practice. Is because when you start adding ink, oh, you can see that I've got a little fiber Oh, can you see that? There we go. On the tip of my nib. And I picked that up probably from my paper towel. You can pull it off or dip it in the water and wash it again. Okay. So just, this is a straight holder, so just hold it like you would normally. And I was telling you about paper. It's going to make more sense now why we like this HP LaserJet is because you start to get all these liquid inks and you don't want paper that's going to buckle and bleed and just make a mess. So this is a great affordable practice paper. So just start making some strokes and see if you can get that nib to work. If the ink's not coming off, try cleaning it again. So I'm just adding another little drop. Okay, see, that was not coming off right away. Sometimes I have to do a little scratch. If it's not coming off right away, try scratching it to get the ink flowing, because the tip can kind of dry a little bit. So go ahead, just make some strokes. And you can start to see the more pressure you add, the thicker your stroke is going to get. Thin, thick, thin, thin, thick, thin. Okay, if you've cleaned it and you're still having a problem with the ink coming off, you might need to adjust the angle of your hold. So if it's too upright, it's not going to flow off. There's not going to be room for the ink to really come off very easy. Well, it is right there, but trust me on this one. If it's too upright, it's not going to come off very well. And if it's same, if it's too low, it's not going to come off very well. Or on the opposite end, you'll just get blobs rather than the crisp lines that you want. And if it's upright and you have ink, it could easily blob as well. So about 45 degrees is what you want. So that's another thing you can check. If it's not coming off and you've cleaned it and the ink seems to be sticking well, try adjusting the angle. Okay, see, mine's not coming off right now. I'm just scratching it until it starts coming. So all I want you to do is just get used to getting the ink off of the page. Okay, once you feel like, okay, this is working, it's coming off the nib, okay, maybe try the other nib and notice how different they are. So I'm switching over to this Leonard one. Let's try this pretty purple so it shows up on the camera for you. And again, you can use the dropper. It's skinny enough that you could dip it in, but it's only going to go as far as the pen holder, and then it kind of makes it a mess. So I prefer to just slide that on the back like I was showing you. Okay, and this one is going to be, oh, see, it's not coming off. So I'm giving it just a little scratch. Okay, my purple is not coming off, so I'm in troubleshoot here. I'm going to give it just a little more ink. Maybe that was my problem. Okay, that worked. And you can see right away how flexible this really is. Much more flexible than the Nico G. So it's going to be a little harder to control, but you're going to be able to get thicker and thinner lines. And everyone's going to have a preference. And like I said, depending on the project, depending on the paper, your nib preference is going to change. But the Nico G is pretty much, I mean, that's going to get you through pretty much every project. When you start wanting to get really thinner hairlines, then the Nico G will give you. You get into like the Hunt nibs, and they have that extra pointy tip that just catches on the paper if you haven't had a lot of practice. So that's why I don't start with those ones. Nico G is just a great nib to have all around. Okay, I'm going to clean these off. So when you're done using your nib, I just swish it in the water and dry it. You might have noticed I don't take my nibs out of the holder. But you're supposed to, because they can get ink up there on the body of it and rust, and then they're really hard to get out of your holder. So I do recommend taking them out after you're done using them so that they can dry and then they don't get stuck to your holder. If that does happen, you can run it under hot water if it's been in there a while and there's ink and stuff up there. Run it under hot water and it should come out eventually. Might have to grab a pair of pliers. So just when you're done with your nibs, just swish it in the water, clean it off, and then you're ready to go for next time. Okay, if you've been practicing, go ahead and grab the guidelines and warm-ups page. It's going to give you a little more information about getting started. So I'm going to dip this just because I'm going to be doing a lot with you guys here. And if I'm dipping straight into a jar, it's going to be pretty blobby, you can see. I usually just do a wipe on the edge. Do that one more time so you can see it's pretty blobby. I usually just do a wipe, and that gets rid of the excess. All right, Raquel's pointed it out nicely here, how she set up her guidelines. This is pretty standard for dip pen, traditional type calligraphy. You have your baseline here. Let's see if I can highlight that. Your baseline here, your header line. This is where like your minuscule lowercase letters are going to sit. This will be your first ascender line, second ascender line, your first descender line, and your second descender line. And then these are at a 55-degree slant. So a little more formal guidelines we have here this month. Okay, let's go ahead and get warmed up. These are going to be similar to the drills that I included last month with the glass pen. And all we're doing is warming up our hand here. Don't have to worry about thick or thin. You can even just use a pencil if you want. It's just to get our hand moving. And to test out all your fun new colors. Switch colors if you want. Again, the Ziller ink is typically ready to use. Like I said, if you leave your lid off, some of the water could evaporate, so you may need to add a drop or two. But for the most part, it is very, very user-friendly. But at a sitting like this, like I mentioned, where we'll be doing lots together and the lid's off, I may end up needing to add a drop or two. And I do keep just a dropper like this handy. They typically recommend like using distilled water because some inks can mold over time depending on the ingredients. Or bottled water, but let's be honest, we just kind of use what we have. But if your ink molds, know that that could be why, was that you used maybe tap water, if your tap water's not very clean. Okay. And if you're brand new this month and haven't been with us for the last few months, no worries at all. We talk a lot about how downstrokes is where you typically add pressure and upstrokes is light pressure. So anytime your hand comes down, you usually add to get thick lines. And anytime your hand goes up is when it's lighter, so you get the thin lines. Okay, my hand is officially warmed up. You're probably feeling that in your hand. All right. Hopefully you're feeling comfortable. If you have questions or if you're feeling frustrated at this point and it's just not working as smoothly as you feel like it maybe should, stop, back up, clean your nib first. Try it again. If that doesn't work, check the angle that you're holding your pen holder at. Now you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so if it's upright like this, it's not going to flow as smoothly, and it will probably just blob really easy. Let's see if I can focus that. Likewise, if it is too low, you're just going to get blobs and not really thick and thin. It's going to be all the same. So I hold it about 45 degrees right here is my spot where I can get thick and thin pretty well. Right about 45 degrees. And you can hear that I'm adding the pressure. Whoops, I'm running out of ink here. Okay, it wasn't coming, so I just gave it a few dabs to get it flowing. You can see the more pressure you add, the thicker you're going to get. Thin, thick. Okay, so again, clean your nib if that's not working. Check your angle. If that's still not working, maybe try adding a drop or two of water to your ink. Not too much though, because if you get too much, it's just going to blob off everywhere, and then you won't be happy at all. Okay, at this point, I can tell that my nib needs cleaned major. So I'm going to try and not get the holder in the water, but it happens. And then I'll just wipe it with my paper towel. When the ink starts to kind of dry on your nib and gets just, you can start to see it kind of get a little bit gunky and building up, then it's time to clean your nib. Or you can be preventative and just clean it every page or so of practice that you're doing. Okay, the next page in the workbook, Raquel is going to give us some more tips about our setup. So with the guidelines, and you can watch some of our previous videos too, but it's always nice to hear someone else explain it. That's why I love having a guest artist. So she says your nib tines should be parallel to the paper, okay? And both tines should touch the paper at the same time. So this will allow for the ink to flow. So she says it a little more official than I just did. But they want to be parallel to the paper. So, and then both of them should be touching. Okay. So right there, nothing's happening. You can keep going until you get that angle. You can try it that way too. Okay, posture, you want to make sure you're sitting up straight and your table's not too high up or too low. You want to hold your pen lightly. I'm a very heavy-handed writer, so I have to remind myself of this often. Sorry about that lighting. And also your hands start to cramp a lot. So I've learned that if you hold something in your other hand, it tends to loosen up my grip on this hand. I don't have to do it as much now, but if you're finding that your hand is shaking and you're white-knuckled and you're holding it so tight that your hand is hurting, grab onto something in your other hand so that it balances out. And then to hold it, it's going to be similar to how you hold a regular writing utensil. And I know my grip is not proper. I use 2 fingers where most people use 1. So hold it like you do typically and then adjust from there. A lot of people will put their, like Raquel's saying here, your holder should be between your thumb and your forefinger, resting on your middle finger. So the tripod hold. And then she uses her ring finger and her pinky finger. She kind of fans them out for added support. So when you're flourishing, or when you're really moving, that will help you have a steady hand. So that's how she holds hers. But you want to also be comfortable. So kind of start with your natural grip and then work from there. Decide what's going to give you the most comfortable, but also the most precise lines, the thick and the thin. And then, so once you've got your angle figured out and your hold figured out, then you need to turn your paper until the tines, so hold your pen. We've talked about this in almost every lesson. And then turn your paper until the tines match up with the slant lines. So if I'm holding it like this, I need to turn it clear till it matches up there. If I'm a lefty and I'm holding it like this, I need to turn it clear to here so that it matches up with the slant lines. Once you're all set up, go ahead and just test it out. Oh, I've got another fuzz, you can see, and that's going to make your ink blobby. So pull that out or rinse it in water if you need to. All right, so go ahead and try making some lines. Just following that slant angle. You can try thick, thin, thick, thin. If you need to adjust the paper a little bit, do that. Try going up, down, up, down. Okay, go ahead and get some practice here, and then we are ready to kind of move into the flourishing. Don't be intimidated. Just dive in, and we'll just get started. All right, on this page, Raquel is explaining to you about the types of flourishes. So when you signed up, you should have gotten my minuscule letter exemplar, and I'll post it in the Facebook group also, just for reference. So basically the basic letters without the flourishes. I'll repost that again so that you can have that for practice. So what Raquel is showing us this month is the flourishes. Okay, these are the types of flourishes. She has 1, 2, 3 different types here, and she's saying these flourishes will work on these letters, and they will not work on ascenders or descenders. Ascenders are these tall letters. Descenders are the letters that drop below. These type of flourishes work on ascenders. these type of flourishes work on descenders. And then some minuscules have flourishing on top and bottom. And then just a reminder, be careful when flourishing, because if it's done incorrectly, it can affect the legibility. Meaning, like if I had a letter A, I'm going to show you here. Here's her A up here. But if I did a letter A like this, and I used, oh, I don't know, that flourish down there, that's kind of going to make it look maybe more like a G or a Q. So if that was in a letter, that could be kind of confusing. Or if I was with a U and I did that, that's going to be with a Y. You know, so you want to be careful and not overdo it. Not every letter needs flourished, and you want to be careful if you flourish it, is it making it look like a different letter? So make sure that your flourishes, I would say this is a great place to start, just using these three, these two ascender, these descender, and these, so that you're not changing your letters so that they don't look like letters. All right, so she has given us these minuscules to practice. You have an extra practice blank guideline here. And honestly, if you want to use your pencil first, it's a good idea. You could use your blank guidelines. If you are completely new to this and you've never done it before, I would maybe suggest just tracing directly on this exemplar. Because if you're completely new to this, you're going to need a little more practice than some of the others, and that's totally fine and totally expected. So you could just trace right on top of this with a pencil, or you could also use tracing paper. I love having tracing paper handy simply because then I can practice over and over and over again, and my pages won't be written on. You know, I don't have to keep printing them out or whatever the case may be. So you can use tracing paper. And on my tracing paper, I always have my dates. Just kind of a little tip. It's fun to go back and look maybe 5 years ago what your calligraphy was looking like or what you were practicing. So trace right on top. Start with a pencil. And then once you're kind of feeling like, okay, maybe I want to try some of these pretty inks, you can get your pen holder back out and try some of the inks. And again, if you're brand new to calligraphy, use that lowercase exemplar I sent you when you first signed up. If you're not sure, or if you're not a subscriber, if you hop over to the website and add yourself to my email list, it will pop right up after you do that. And if you're still not finding it, just shoot me an email or a comment and say, hey, can I get that lowercase exemplar to practice? And I will share it with you. I can put it in this month's blog also. Okay, so on my ascenders, a lot of the time for me, I do this down part first, and then I'll go back and do the flourish after. So go ahead and keep practicing. And all that practice was done with pencil. Totally a great idea to start with pencil, because then you're not worrying about your ink and your nib and everything all at once. So that is just an exemplar for you to keep handy to practice and to refer to, you know, as often as you want to. as much as you want to practice. Here's a little more information on hand and arm movement. How do you know if your flourish will look good? Take some time to look at the resources that Raquel has included. And then she did both of our quotes this month. So since you had 2 samples, I just left it to what Raquel gave to us. So again, you could grab tracing paper and you could trace over it. You could grab your blank practice sheet and come up with your own quote and flourishes. And then once you've decided how you want to do your quote for this month, we are going to try it on the black paper, which adds another element of practice. With the dark paper or black paper, you're going to have to draw some guidelines on. So this is my Westcott ruler. I like it because it's see-through, so you can make those guidelines going down. I'm just going to mark at, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 inches. We'll make 4 inches our first baseline, and then 1 inch down our second, and 1 inch down. If you want to draw in header lines, I would draw those at about 1/4 of an inch. Or close to. Just to give you something to go off of. And I'm going to do the deep root, never doubt, spring will come. And she has that beautiful T to start with, where the flourish is just so with flourishing, you definitely want to start with a pencil. It's going to take a lot of layout to get it just how you want. So remember, the base and the header are where your lowercase or minuscule letters will sit in between. The deep roots never doubt. And this P right here that she did on this quote is so unique. I love this, where she brought it up to balance it out, because there was an empty space here. So let's see how that, the spring, will come. And this is by Marty Rubin. And you could, so I'll show you what I've got here. Mine, I ended up being a little off center. That's okay. I will just add a little bit of florals on this edge to balance it out, or you could cut it out or start over and center it if you wanted to. But I think I'll just add a little flourish vine over here, which I do want to show you how I would ink this. So I'm going to try this Leonard 33 nib, the really flexible one. And I think maybe we'll do some pretty purple on this black and see how it turns out. All right, so I'm going to drip a few things on the back, a few drops on the back. And I do like to have a piece of scratch paper next to me. So what I like to do before I do a final piece, before I go right to my page, I like to just make a few scratches on the scratch paper. It makes sure that my nib is flowing. So let me move this. We'll use this as scratch paper. Well, and it's not flowing, so now I've got to troubleshoot. Okay. Nope. It's this purple ink I've noticed. The purple one is a little bit, might need some water. Okay, so one thing that it does is gets your ink flowing. And the second thing it does is if you have any blobs, hopefully it ends up on your scratch paper rather than right on to the piece that you just penciled, because you don't want to ruin it with a nice big blob. And trust me, I know it happens. Okay, so I am just going to go over my pencil lines. Okay, I'm going to have to add a little bit of water. I can tell it's being so finicky. So all I did was I dipped this in my cleaning water. And you can't even tell, but it's going to add just a bit, and let's see if that does it. Yep, that did just what I needed to. So that thinned it out enough. So the reason we chose a straight holder this month is because with Flourishing, you're doing so much turning of the page to get the pretty flourishes that the oblique sometimes isn't even necessary to make the flourishes. So see how I'm turning it to get all the pretty angles. And look, hopefully Raquel's so proud of my tea that I made. Okay, I put more ink on the back. If I don't go over to my scratch paper, it's likely that that blob is going to end up right on my page. And with flourishes, remember that the general rule is just, for sure, like the golden rule is that two thick lines do not cross. A thick and a thin line can cross, and a thin, but you don't want two thick lines to cross, or it just mushes up your design. And I can tell with this Leonard nib, it could be very frustrating for some of you who have never used a nib. So if you haven't before, I definitely say try the Nico G first. Okay, so I've got my inking done. There may be a few places I want to touch up, or like this R where I was kind of running out of ink and it really soaked in. But I'm going to let that dry really well and then erase my guideline, and then I will revisit this and kind of finalize my piece. So I'm cleaning off my nib, just swished it in the water and drying it off. And it is nice and dry. So I will take my eraser, whether I used a regular pencil or the Fons and Porter. Let's go ahead and erase our guidelines. And it took me a lot of years to know that you kind of have to use guidelines to get really quality work. So don't take them for granted. Definitely use them to practice. Definitely use them to guide your work and to create your pieces, because if you're using your guidelines, your work's just going to come out much more precise and quality, and you can tell that it is done with care. And it just looks a lot nicer. And you can tell when your piece is finished that it is nice and proportioned. And this is looking really nice here. Again, I love this pencil. I'll link it below. It's got to be my favorite thing in my toolbox because you have to have something on the black paper. All right, there's my quote. And it's not too off center, but I'll just show you a way that you could add to the side over here. Let's see, I haven't tried this orange color yet. Some of you should have this pretty orange.
Okay, so we're gonna do a flourished bouquet on this card, and what I'm gonna do is actually gonna go upside down. So this is gonna be the top of my card, but since flourishing bigger things, you really have to kind of pull. I want the bouquet to be up here and then maybe a message down here, and I'll kind of show you how that works. So I do have my nib. I believe this is a browse. I can't really pull it out right now. My ink Midas holder, and I do have my ink holder from Creative Ink Holders, and this right here is a bleed proof white that's just kind of watered down a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to kind of do like a little sketch of what I want to do. So I want to make sure that I leave room down here for whatever I'm gonna put on there later. And like I said, this is the top, so it'll go like this. So this is the top. So let's see, I want to kind of do 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 1 and 1, and I want to have a little thingy down here. Maybe I can go a little bit higher. Okay, so this is just kind of a rough draft of how I want it to look. So once I finish, then I can decide whether I want to put my message up here or my message down here, but we'll go from there. Perfect. So now let me just make sure that you can see it. There we go. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and dip, and I am going to come down here softly. There we go. And as you can see, this is an arm movement. There we go. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make some kind of see-through wheat. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to do little tiny ovals just coming up, and you can kind of have them go on top of each other like this, or you can have them be standalones. It doesn't have to be perfect. We'll fill in all the other spots in a little bit. Always finish with one on top. Then the next one we're gonna do is gonna be actual wheat. So we're gonna put our tip of our nib down, and then we're gonna press down softly and then let go as you pull out, so you can have kind of like a little teardrop. And we're just gonna keep doing that, going upwards. And don't be afraid to move your card as much as you need to. Now here, instead of going on the same spot, I like to go kind of in between. There we go, and one at the top. And there's also the larger wheat. So it's essentially the same thing, but we're gonna do a much larger. 2, 3, 4, oop. And then on this side, 1, 2, 3, and our fourth, we're gonna put it in the middle. There we go. Now we're gonna come over here, and I like to come off the bottom and then come up. And here we're gonna do some pine leaves. So I'm gonna start down here, and I'm just gonna very softly pull. Just pull, 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 pull. Same thing on the other side. And maybe we can do like a smaller one here. See how I'm kind of missing some spots? That's totally okay. Don't worry about it. It all comes together in the end. I really like how that one looks, so I'm just gonna come over here and do one over here too. Perfect. These are perfect for Christmas time, by the way. So if you ever want to do these for Christmas, they're beautiful. I'm gonna come up, and I'm just gonna do just a normal leaf. Now we're gonna come over here and do the same thing, and maybe we'll do the same thing over here. And let's see, how are we looking? How about we do just like one piece, so we can come up here. Oh, there's a little hair on my nib. There we go. So we can come right here and just kind of go like that, just one. You don't have to go all the way down, especially if it's getting really crowded here. Don't worry about it. So we can come here, kind of do one. How about we come, how about we do some kind of like bounce lines? So all we're gonna do is softly go in, press down and release. Oops. And don't worry if they don't look perfect, that's totally fine. I mean, I was kind of trying to curb with it, but it's totally okay, like I said. Sometimes I like to follow the tip of a leaf and do little dots, and then you can kind of do like a little oval or circle or whatever you want to do, and we can do it this way too. And we can go, this one I don't want it because I want to kind of follow the direction of the leaf, and it would just go right into my pine leaf right there. So how about this one will go this way, since it's kind of facing that way. Perfect. Now that I'm kind of done with it. I like how it looks. I think it's very pretty. We're gonna come down here and do kind of our bouquet holder. I'm gonna clean this up just because I've been using it for a little bit. We could even do some right here, look. Pew, 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 pew. Pew, 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 pew. It's not perfect. It's not gonna be even on both sides, and that's totally okay. Now this one, it'll be a lot easier for you if you do go slower, but the more you practice, the faster you can go, and the easier and prettier it'll look. So I'll go a little bit slow on top and make sure that I'm kind of going on a triangular motion, so wider and then coming down smaller. Sorry, I've been talking, I gotta clean it again. Okay, so I'm gonna start here, press down, come back soft, press down, come back soft. You're gonna have to reload on this one quite a bit. Press down. And then once I get down here, I can just kind of pull it like that. There you go. You can kind of turn this one. There we go. And there's our bouquet. Now if you wanted to do like happy birthday, or you wanted to do like a little flower, you could come in and do like a little flower, do a little flower up here, whatever you wanted to do. Happy birthday down here or up here. Obviously once it dries, you don't want to do any of that right now, but I hope you liked it. If you find that you really don't like some of these areas where I was kind of like jerky and jittery when I was doing it, no worries, nobody will be able to tell. You're the only one. You can add more, you can add less. Always remember though, less is more. If you add a lot, it does start looking kind of crazy. But let's say I kind of wanted to add something else here, so maybe I could come over here and do another one of these little dot ones both ways. I could come over here and just kind of put another one down here and have it be like a one-sided wheat. Let's say I kind of wanted to come over here as well, and I could even just do like a little thingy like that. That was awful, but you get the gist. If you wanted to add more, you can. If you wanted to add less, you kind of can't, so you got to be careful with what you do put in. And I hope you liked it, and I hope you have fun. And here's our homemade card. Oh look, and maybe it dried a little bit. I can do love you down here. You can do and there you go. There's your card.
Okay, we've got just a couple more things to show you. For your project this month, you have your own nib tin. And so, or I mean, you can put whatever you want in this, but we thought we would have Raquel design a label for it, Nibs, or you can test out your own new design that you've practiced this month and make your own label. You can use your inks that you have from last month. You can use, if you're brand new, use the inks from this month, whatever you have. Ziller inks are acrylic, so they should work on your labels fairly well. And you can just design a new label for your tin. You can see here that I had a, there it is. I had a little fuzz in my nib, and that's what's going to happen when you have a fuzz. It's going to smear your ink. So I'm going to pull that out and try it one more time without the fuzz. So have fun just on your spare paper, scratch paper, backs of your paper, wherever. Design your label. And then you can put it on your tin. Because this is really glossy sticker, you're going to have to wait for that to dry for a bit. So while that's drying, I'm going to show you, we did send you 2 designs in case you wanted to add some florals. If you have some color, you could add, I'll show you how you could add, I'll just grab this gold, show you something different. The colors that you have, or you could add some highlights, or you could trace over top of it if you wanted a different color, just to kind of add a little bit of, oh, caught that drop. Just to add your own little flair. So I could kind of add a gold outline. Or I could even go right over the top if I wanted to do a different color. This is pretty thick, so use the Leonard nib so that you can kind of get the same thickness. I'm using the Nico right now, and I'm having to push pretty hard to get the same thickness, but you get the idea. So just have fun creating your labels and show us what you do. Maybe you add some flowers, maybe you draw, I don't know, a pen, a nib, whatever. It'd just be fun to see, and then you can start collecting your own nibs, and I will have additional tins on my site for sale. So once that's dry, you can apply it here. And then the very last thing I want to show you is the homemade watercolors that you're going to get this month. So I told you that I was experimenting with these. So you can see that this gold didn't dry completely, or actually it's like a bronze, copper. And you can see that this dried a little too much. These are still a little bit sticky. Like I said, I was experimenting, and you guys get to benefit from all my experiments. They still are beautiful, they still write beautiful, but I am still perfecting the recipe. But I do want to show you how I would use these. And I do have magnets on the back of them. So each month when you get them, you can add them to your tin. They'll have a magnet. And I'll have other sizes available for purchase on the shop. So this one dried perfectly. I think I've finally figured out the right mixture. But just to kind of give you an idea, this one didn't dry perfectly. It's still going to write, but I want to show you how you can use these. So let me grab just some scratch paper. And then you're going to want just a paintbrush. Doesn't matter the shape, the size. I mean, a little bit smaller size, but or a dropper. What you want to do is just kind of put about 2 drops in. to activate it. Can you see that? 1, 2. So let that sit for just a second. You can use your brush or just, there's a big drop. There's a big drop. And this is just kind of activating the pigment. So I'm going to show you this one first because I know it's going to work super well. So what I mean by activating the pigment, you can see that those shimmery flakes are kind of starting to lift. So I'm just going to swish that around with my brush. And you might be wondering, well, how do I get this onto my dip pen? And it's going to be the same way that we used our sample inks. So just on the back side of your nib, you're just going to paint a little drop. And it is ready to test. I actually love, this is like a copper, I don't know, I guess you're supposed to name all these colors, but I just like making them and sending them to you. So I don't have names for them, but maybe like a copper terracotta color. Okay, we'll let that dry. So that's how you can use your inks. So like I said, you've got 3 inks in your kit. It's going to be either any three of these colors. I think everyone got one of these terracotta because the mixture was perfect finally. And then you got 2 of my experiments over there. So let's write. And I typically just kind of keep the brush in this hand and my pen in this hand. Okay, I'm going to swish out my brush and show you what this is like a bronzy. So it's going to be kind of sticky, but it's still going to make a pretty ink. So it's going to be more brown than the terracotta. You can see I got a little blobby there, so I might need to get a little more of the paint, less of the water. And let's try some of the purple. And then some of you will have this green color. So like I said, they didn't dry perfectly, but they still make some really fun colors to play with. You can use them as watercolors. You can use them as ink on your dip pens. So let me know which colors you loved, which colors you want to see. And then next month, you will get more colors in your kits and some more fun things to play with. And those of you who have stuck around this long, we do have a giveaway for our subscribers, and those of you who share your journey on social media, you'll get this Flourishing book. And it just has some really fun designs for you to practice some of your flourishes. And I'll send you some of my other favorite nibs as well. So I can't wait to see everything you did. Oh, we should quickly put on our label too. Let's see, I'll just use this one because it looks the driest. Put your label on, and then you can store your nibs in there. Okay guys, this was a fun box. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and I can't wait to show you what's up in the next one. Have a great day.